Xbox responds to the Brazilian market authorities' decision for Activision Blizzard. All right, guys, before we get into this, my goal is to hit 10K subscribers by the end of the year, and I see a lot of you are new here. If you like daily content, you like these styles of videos, please consider hitting that subscribe button. So as we know, last week, Brazil officially approved the deal of Xbox purchasing Activision Blizzard, and this was the first major authority that we had heard that PlayStation had went to and complained to Brazil, trying to block the deal, pretty much saying that they could not compete if this deal were to go through because nobody could create a competitor to Call of Duty. Brazil called out PlayStation, saying that that is not the case. You're going to be able to compete, and they in no way think that this is going to harm the industry in terms of competition. You take a look at Nintendo, who has been competing very well without Call of Duty on their platform for years. We saw all the stuff that came out about that, and now we have an official statement from Microsoft on the decision from the Brazilian Market Authority. So let's take a look at it and go through it. So first of all, one of the main things here is that back on October 5th, Cade approved the Microsoft Activision Blizzard deal without restriction. Now, the without restriction things is another big thing, because as we know, they could have approved this deal and then put some restrictions on how they distribute their games. For example, saying at no point could Call of Duty not be on the PlayStation platform. We know Xbox has already said with this that right now going forward, it is going to be on PlayStation, but maybe in a couple of years, Xbox will take a step back, look at the video game industry and wonder if it is worth their costs to put it on the PlayStation platform, maybe in like 3 or 4 years or so. I have a feeling it still will be, but it's definitely something that Xbox and Microsoft are going to keep an eye on. First thing they say here, the video game industry is competitive. Microsoft and Activision are relatively small players in game development and publishing, game distribution via almost all channels, and online advertising and merchandising. I mean, that is a point that people love to focus on, because there are huge companies out there that don't get mentioned all the time as much as Xbox and Microsoft get mentioned, probably because they aren't making a $68.9 or $69 billion acquisition. But you think about the industry, you think about how big Sony is, you think about how big Tencent is, Xbox is still going to be below those companies once this deal goes through. And in Brazil specifically, Sony is the market leading platform, and Nintendo is also growing their presence in Brazil. So Xbox has a lot of work to be the dominant platform within Brazil and then create this environment where there's no competition. It's just not going to happen, and the Brazilian authorities saw that, as it's their job to protect consumers. And by having more competition, it's always better for the consumer. Now it continues on here, and they say there is no credible risk that the combination will lead to competition concerns in any of the markets in which Microsoft and Activision Blizzard compete. The company's combined shares in these areas of competitive overlap are low, below 20% in all potential segments, and multiple strong competitors remain active. The combined market shares would not reach the threshold at which competition concerns could arise in Brazil. And I guess the biggest point out of this, as we know, Cade already approved this deal, but they are highlighting here that in any markets in which Microsoft and Activision Blizzard compete in, there will not be any concerns for competition. Next point here, no customer input foreclosure resulting from the acquisition. In areas where Microsoft and Activision have complementary capabilities, for example, digital distributions of games for consoles for Microsoft, game publishing for Activision, and publishing games for Activision, and an in-game advertising for Microsoft. The merged entity would not have the incentive to either stop making third-party game publishers games available on Xbox, or stop licensing Activision Blizzard's game content to rival content platforms. And again, they are highlighting the fact that they are going to still be putting Activision Blizzard games on other platforms, with no real incentive at this point from a business perspective to take them off, specifically Call of Duty, with the amount of money that they would probably lose and probably not be able to make up right away from the amount of people going over to the Xbox ecosystem and over to Xbox Game Pass to play the game. Now they go on here to say that Cade's analysis in Brazil also shared a number of positions. The first one here being Activision Blizzard's game portfolio is strong, obviously particularly Call of Duty, but there is no evidence that Call of Duty is essential to rival game distributors. Cade ultimately found there is no evidence in the file that the company has market power in the game publishing segment, or that their titles can be considered indispensable for the commercial success of a given console or digital game distribution platform, especially from the perspective of the Brazilian consumer. And that was a major point of them going ahead and approving this deal. They look at this, they look at Call of Duty, and they see, yes, Call of Duty is massive on PlayStation. It makes up a large amount of their revenue. The game is still going to be on the platform, but then you take a look at the Nintendo platform where there is no Call of Duty and just how successful Nintendo is and how much strength PlayStation already has within the market in terms of marketing, in terms of market share, in terms of brand loyalty. And we've seen this happen multiple times with PlayStation. They can literally put anything out and people are running out and purchasing it. They've done a great job of getting loyal consumers to their products over the decades of PlayStation, over the many different generations. And that's not all just going to randomly disappear because Call of Duty is not on the platform. Sure, they're going to lose some of that market share of Call of Duty, specifically with gamers looking at the value that Xbox is going to be providing with Xbox Game Pass and thinking, why would I go spend $70 right now on the newest Call of Duty played on PlayStation when I can go over to Xbox Game Pass, spend $10 to $15 per month, get access to Call of Duty on day one, plus get access to this massive catalog of games, plus the first party day and date games from Xbox all year long. So that's going to definitely have an effect, and it'll be very interesting to see how much of an effect it has. I think it will have a pretty decent effect, but in no way is it going to hurt PlayStation in a way that they're just going to collapse and not be able to compete. And I mean, essentially, Brazil looked at that and thought along those lines as well. Next point here, Microsoft would have clear incentives to continue licensing Activision Blizzard games to third-party consoles and other platforms. And again, yes, they've already said they're going to do it, but here is what Cade believes. Cade believes that the fact that Call of Duty has traditionally been a cross-platform game series has a significant influence on the number of users and the sales performance of the franchise. After all, it is a logical inference that the greater the number of hardware platforms on which a given game is playable, the greater the base of potential users and purchasers of that game. And I mean, right there, we can continue reading and I'll go over it, but that is in essence what Xbox sees and believes and is trying to do with their ecosystem alone. Take away PlayStation, take away Nintendo. That's what they see. That's what their end goal is. More places to play games, no matter what they're on, the better the potential is for the user base, the more money you're going to make, all of that type of stuff. If we're up to Xbox, Game Pass would be on PlayStation, Game Pass would be on Nintendo, Game Pass would be on your smart fridge, which I think it actually kind of is with Xbox Cloud Gaming, but it would literally be everywhere. So for Xbox to take a massive game like that with a huge user base off of a platform doesn't really make any sense. And you could sit back and you think, well, they're doing that with Bethesda with games like Starfield, but Starfield isn't a game that has been established yet. It hasn't been released on these platforms, and it isn't a game that releases yearly and has kind of a live service model to it. It is a single player style experience that will still be available everywhere besides PlayStation and Nintendo. So for them, they look at that as a cost benefit thing, in my opinion. They look at it as, we are still going to be able to keep this on as many platforms by keeping it on Xbox and not anywhere else. But because Starfield is a single player experience, is a brand new IP that has a ton of hype around it, everybody is going to want to play it. They are going to be able to make up the amount of money they would have made by putting it on PlayStation by having a ton of people subscribe to Xbox Game Pass day one just to play Starfield, and people buying it on Steam, buying it on Xbox. Call of Duty, it's different because it's already established. It's already tons of consumers. They know, they already have the numbers in front of them of how much money they're going to be able to make off of PlayStation, which they are able to just reinvest right back into Xbox and back into the Xbox ecosystem. Continues on here to say, given this context, it is likely that, at least in the short term, Call of Duty will lose a significant amount of revenue and players if its games were no longer offered to users of the most popular console in the world. In fact, such a hypothetical scenario can not only negatively impact the franchise's numbers, but also favor other multi-platform games similar to Call of Duty that remain on PlayStation, such as competing series as Battlefield and Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six. And that's a great point too, because you look at EA, they came out and they said, we're looking at this as an opportunity. If they take Call of Duty off of PlayStation and they just have it on the Xbox ecosystem, we're looking at this as an opportunity to be able to get all of those gamers that are playing Call of Duty on PlayStation to our game. And I'm sure all of the other companies are looking at that. They probably hope that Xbox takes it off PlayStation, which is not going to happen right now. Next point here, rivals could still compete even without access to Activision's catalog. Cade mentioned Nintendo Switch as an example of a rival console that currently does not have access to Activision Blizzard content in Brazil. And here is their summary of that. I already talked about this, but it says, although it is recognized that an eventual exclusivity over the distribution of Activision Blizzard's content may give Microsoft a competitive advantage, there is no evidence that such an advantage can by itself harm the performance of third parties to the point of limit competition in the market for digital distribution of electronic games. I mean, when you have live examples like this, like Nintendo, there's really no argument that PlayStation is going to be able to put forward, especially if you're the market leader in that part of the world, where anybody, I guess, with any sort of logic is going to look at that and say, oh yeah, you guys are right. You're doing this to protect competition and not doing it just to protect the interest of your company. And obviously they saw right through that because of how well Nintendo is still doing and many other factors out there. And then finally, the main objective of Cade is to protect competition in Brazil and the welfare of Brazilian consumers, not the private interests of specific competitors. SGK concluded that Sony has been the market leader for more than 20 years, has the largest user base and console installed base, has a robust game catalog and partnerships with third-party publishers, in addition to significant brand loyalty. Those attributes would contribute to the competitiveness of PlayStation after the transaction, even without Activision Blizzard content. And that's the main thing right there. Their brand loyalty is so strong that they're going to be completely fine without Call of Duty. Yes, they're going to lose some revenue. Yes, they're going to lose some money by people going over to the Xbox ecosystem. Yes, they're going to be paying Xbox to further invest into the Xbox platform. Yes, at some point they may be becoming lower than Xbox when it comes to the amount of people playing on their platform in Brazil. They may become the second platform. That may very well happen, but it's not going to make them obsolete where they're not going to be able to compete and still make a ton of money. That's just the name of the game when you compete. Is sometimes you're going to be first, sometimes you're going to be second. And I think PlayStation is seeing the walls come in where their reign of being the top dog in all of these areas for so long without any worry about anybody coming and taking over is starting to close in. As Xbox is coming, they're taking gaming seriously, and whether they like it or not, this is competition. And like I said at the beginning of the video, this is what's great for the consumers now going forward, is this is going to just ramp up how hard these companies compete for our time, for our money, giving us more value, more games, higher quality games, all of that type of stuff. And it'll be very interesting to see the overall numbers of the switch of how many people go from PlayStation to Xbox once the games come onto Xbox Game Pass. But that's it for me, guys. Let me know your thoughts on this. Let me know your thoughts on Xbox's response to the decision from Cade. Do you agree with their points? Do you disagree with their points? All that type of stuff. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that thumbs up button. If you're new here, you liked what you saw, consider hitting that subscribe button. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for your support, and I'll catch you in the next video.